Well, good morning and welcome to our annual conference. And I'd like to start by thanking Marie Goujon for joining our conference today and for reaffirming the Scottish Government's commitment to our rivers and to Scotland's wild salmon. I believe you're able to join us for a little bit longer, which is excellent. Really positive that the Marine Fund Scotland is reopened for applications. And as you mentioned, we were successful in a number of applications to the fund, and it represents a fantastic means of supporting crucial work on the ground, including capital expenditure. So I'm going to start and end my presentation today with a couple of quotes, which I think help to illustrate the current situation. And the first one is from John Kitzhaber, the former governor of Oregon. First salmon are not healthy, then our watersheds are not healthy. And if our watersheds are not healthy, then we've truly squandered our heritage and mortgaged our future. Scotland's rivers are the lifeblood of our nation. They sustain us and provide a haven for wildlife, including wild salmon and trout. Yet we're reminded almost on a weekly basis that our once thriving populations of wild salmon and sea trout are dwindling at an alarming rate. In December, the International Union for Conservation of Nature reclassified Atlantic salmon as endangered in Great Britain. This was as a result of a 30 to 50% decline in population since 2006. And more recently, as we've already heard, the provisional statistics for 2023 suggest that catches of Atlantic salmon in Scotland have reached a new historic low. So as I highlighted at last year's conference, we need to take action on two fronts if we're going to move the dial for our rivers. We need concerted action to protect and restore our freshwater environment, but we also need to do much more to ensure that new and existing activities are regulated effectively so that our efforts to make things better are not compromised. I believe we're headed in the right direction on the former, but we remain a long way from where we need to be on the latter. So just by way of example, earlier today I responded to a consultation on behalf of Fisheries Management Scotland under the Better Environmental Regulation Programme. And the consultation was on proposed amendments to the Environmental Authorisation Scotland Regulations 2018. Not necessarily the sort of thing you'd expect me to get overly animated about. But by the time I got to the end of the foreword, I was genuinely angry. Here we have a consultation building on a previous consultation from 2017, 7 years ago, that contains only a single reference to the nature loss crisis. It appears to downplay SEPA's primary and core role of environmental protection, focusing instead on business growth and proportionate regulation. It's an approach that appears to be about 10 years behind the reality of the environmental crisis that Scotland's facing. Now, I'm genuinely heartened by the fact that the wild salmon crisis is recognised by the Scottish Cabinet, and Marie Goujon has been front and centre in that. And we've moved a really long way in terms of ambition in recent years. It's fantastic that we have set out a series of bold actions in the wild salmon strategy and the biodiversity strategy that, once delivered in full, will make a real difference. And this positive ambition for our natural environment needs to be delivered consistently across government and agencies. We need to reward businesses that do the right thing, but we also need to move away from incentivising activities that do harm. And we need to ensure that regulation is robust and enforced when it needs to be. To coin a phrase, the status quo is no longer an option. Now, as we've already heard a couple of times today, and you'll have heard from Fisheries Management Scotland and our partners in the Missing Salmon Alliance many times before, we continue to hammer home the fact that wild salmon need free access to cold, clean water. And this important point is recognised in the wild salmon strategy, and it was great to hear it from the Cabinet Secretary again this morning. Our conference today, as you've heard, is split into 3 sessions. And in this first session, we'll take stock of where things currently stand. In the second session, we'll look at some of the pressures that we're facing and explore some solutions. And in the final session, we'll look to the future to highlight some of the positive interventions that will make a difference, the mechanisms by which we can collectively provide cold, clean water to the benefit of Scotland's nature. So I hope you forgive me now, but I wanted just to spend a few minutes to reflect on where we've come from and where we're headed as an organisation. Fisheries Management Scotland was established in 2017 as the single representative body for Scotland's Fisheries Salmon Fishery Boards, the Rivers and Fisheries Trust and the River Tweed Commission. And in that year, Scottish Fisheries Coordination Centre became an integral part of FMS, raising our staff complement to a heady 3. In 2018, the Salmon Interactions Working Group was established and the Scottish parliamentary inquiries into salmon farming in Scotland reached their conclusion. 2018 was also the first year of the National Electrofishing Programme for Scotland. 2019 was the International Year of the Salmon. It seems like a long time ago now, but that was a really big thing at the time. And we placed a real focus on raising awareness of the wild salmon crisis, including a dedicated event in the Scottish Parliament. And the programme for government that year included a commitment to develop a wild salmon strategy, and we helped to coordinate the delivery of the second year of nets. In 2020, before the COVID pandemic struck, we held a roundtable event in the Scottish Parliament, again highlighting the wild salmon crisis and some of the things that we need to do to correct it. And the Salmon Interactions Working Group was published, and with support from the Scottish Government and Crown Estate Scotland, we took on our first Aquaculture Interactions Manager. We also started work on developing a map-based system to highlight the pressures that wild salmon face across Scotland. In 2021, we joined the Missing Salmon Alliance and the Riverwoods Initiative, and we helped to deliver a range of projects, including the Adult Salmon Sampling Programme and again the National Electrofishing Programme. The Scottish Government published their response to the Salmon Interactions Working Group alongside a report on the levels of genetic integration in Scotland. In 2022, the Scottish Wild Salmon Strategy was published. We launched a film series entitled Our Wild Salmon at our conference. And at that event, spearheaded by Kedra Langdale, we started to focus on nature finance as a means of restoring river catchments. Our keynote speaker that day was Professor Sir Dieter Helm, and he also contributed to a workshop on catchment scale restoration that was held on the banks of the Dee later that year. And as we heard earlier at the NASCO meeting in Edinburgh, the Cabinet Secretary announced funding for nets and for the development of a consistent suite of fishery management plans across Scotland. Jenny and Leanne joined FMS, although Leanne has now moved on to an exciting new career in the Royal Navy. And the developing water scarcity issues in Scotland were again front and centre in 2022. And last year, the Biodiversity Strategy and the Wild Salmon Strategy Implementation Plan were published. And as identified in the Wild Salmon Strategy, Scottish Forestry announced an uplift for riparian planting through the Forestry Grant Scheme. We continue to grow our capacity. Paul joined as our Director for Nature Finance, supported by the Esme Fairbairn Foundation and the Missing Salmon Alliance. And Paul managed to secure funding from the Facility for Investment Ready Nature Scotland, or FIRNS, which allowed us to take on Leah as an intern. And you hear more about Paul and Leah's work in Session 3. We also, as you've already heard, made 4 successful applications to Marine Fund Scotland, and this important support allowed us to deliver some key projects. In partnership with the Pink Salmon Task Group, this funding supported eDNA monitoring work and the installation and operation of a bespoke pink salmon track on the River Thurso. And you'll hear more about this from Colin Bean in the next session. It supported work by FMS members to complete the final phase of development of fishery management plans across Scotland. And we used that funding to purchase electrofishing equipment to support crucial monitoring undertaken by FMS members and acoustic deterrent devices to support our members in protecting wild salmon and sea trout from seal predation in rivers. Taken together with grant funding for delivering monitoring programmes, including nets and the Adult Salmon Sampling Programme, this grant funding to support wild salmon conservation amounted to just under £1.5 million in 2023. And we're extremely grateful for all of the support that FMS continues to receive. So what's 2024? Well, today we publish a Scotland-wide suite of fishery management plans, and this is a project I'm really proud of. And it's fantastic to see the breadth and extent of actions to protect and restore our wild salmon all summarised in one place. Sean, who did a fantastic job of coordinating this project and who provided a vast amount of technical expertise, will talk more about this in session 3. As we'll hear in the next session, the Sea Lice Risk Framework started in February and will be working to support the effective delivery of this important regulatory framework. And earlier this week, we completed recruitment for an exciting new post, which will take our staff complement to 8. This new post, which is supported by Crown Estate Scotland, will increase our capacity to support delivery of the Wild Salmon Strategy and the Riverwoods Initiative, and the successful individual will support our members in continuing to do great things on the ground. So we're rolling our sleeves up. We're investing time and capacity to make things better. And crucially, we've done so without creating an additional burden on any of our members, because we absolutely recognise the extremely difficult situation that local managers find themselves in. But we need more help to really make a difference. So clearly, we remain a small organisation, and our capacity is limited, and that's why we're committed to working in partnership with government, with agencies, with fellow NGOs and businesses across Scotland. We are laser focused on protecting and restoring Scotland's aquatic environment, and we're happy to work with anyone who has the same goal. But in doing so, we'll also be a critical friend, making clear when things aren't working or where more needs to be done. So what do we need to do? And I was asked this question by a Scottish Government official several months ago, and the answer I gave was as follows. Everything, everywhere, all at once. Contrary to what the Cabinet Secretary said earlier on. But I do recognise that that isn't possible, particularly under the current financial situation within government. But we mustn't lose sight of the scale and urgency of the task that we face. We do need to do a huge amount. We do need to do it at scale, and we absolutely need to do it with urgency. Now, I recognise there are many people out there who are frustrated right now and who think they have the answer. But I want to be quite clear. I've seen no evidence that there's a single intervention that will put us back on track. Some people advocate hatcheries as a solution, but stocking our rivers will not solve the wild salmon crisis. That's not to say that well-designed, time-limited interventions don't have a role to play in some circumstances. That may well be the case, and we'll be exploring that further throughout the day. Others point the finger at predation, or at fish farming, or hydro, or pollution, or marine fisheries. The reality is that salmon face pressures at all life stages, from all of these pressures and more. But the relative importance of these pressures differs across different catchments and at different times. Currently, salmon face death by 1,000 cuts, and we need to take action wherever pressures are acting on our wild salmon and sea trout populations. For too long, our rivers and our wider environment have suffered due to inaction. We're told we can't take action on pressure A because there's a perception that no one's doing anything on pressure B. There's always a reason or an excuse for delay. This has to end. We have to control pressures on our wild salmon wherever they are. And we need to start by controlling the pressures that we can control. And if the powers to control those pressures aren't currently fit for purpose, then we need to fix that when the Natural Environment Bill comes before the Scottish Parliament. But I want to end on a positive note, because I am genuinely positive that we can make a significant difference, despite the numerous challenges that we face. And one of the key reasons I'm optimistic is because of the people I encounter on a daily basis, many of whom are in this room. Despite operating in a really difficult environment, the energy, passion and positivity of our community continues to inspire me. And today you'll get a sense of the fantastic work being delivered by boards and trusts across Scotland, but this is just a snapshot. Our members, alongside other NGOs and Scotland's anglers and gillies, are the guardians of our rivers and the champions of the wild salmon. I would encourage everyone to learn more about the fantastic work that's already taking place across Scotland and think about what you can do to support these efforts. I strongly believe that we can channel that passion and positivity and use it to make a real difference to our river catchments, our wider environment, and to our wild salmon. So I'm going to leave you with one final quote, and this time from Canada. I attended the International Year of the Salmon Symposium in Vancouver in 2022, and the most powerful interventions by far came from First Nation representatives, people who care deeply about living in harmony with nature. I want to leave a better future for my children. I'm sure we all do. And for me, this summed it up perfectly. Thank you for listening.